Hey everybody, today we're going to do a before and after video on my 125 gallon native tank here, but we're going to start from halfway through. I was just going to do a simple water change. I was going to do a big one, but it was going to be a basic one, and as I got in there and started tinkering around, I decided that today was going to be the day that I was going to mess with my giant piece of wood right here. So the tank is still draining. I'm going to let it go down a little bit more than that. Yes, I do know that the heater is not only plugged in, but it is currently heating. The heating element doesn't start down to below the water line, and I've kept my hand on it. It's not overly hot, and of course I've got the water spraying directly at it. So we're going to keep an eye on that regardless. You really shouldn't let your heaters overheat, and you really should not keep them running if they're exposed above the water line. So I am aware of that. That is something that we're going to keep our eye on. If you were going to point that out and mention that to me, I am aware of that. This huge piece of wood right here was jammed in a little further this way and more up. And this rock was actually tucked back into this little notch right here to give it some weight. And this big rock right here was actually standing upright and was wedged under the brace here, and that was physically holding the piece of wood down because it was so buoyant when I found it and put it in the tank. So now it's been in the tank for a while, and I'm hoping it will stay submerged with the rocks that I have in there. Now, if you'll notice, I've got this really substantial rock right here. It's probably, well, I can't really move that Anubias right there, but this hollowed log, this rock is actually stuck into it, and it comes all the way down into here. This is all part of that same rock. If you look over here, that's all part of that same rock. It's huge, not this piece here, but this here is part of that rock, and it's a really big one. So hopefully that will hold that down into the tank, but hopefully I can also keep it in the tank in such a way that we'll still be able to see in the tank, and maybe eventually I can even get it out of there altogether. I've also created a bit of a gap between where the wood used to be lying against this rock there, so we'll allow more water circulation, more movement of the fish to swim through. And why this is here is I'm actually holding that up a little bit, and that is rocking this way and allowing us to see in there. If it sits naturally, it tends to rock forward, and it's sort of dark and shadowy in there to the point where you can barely even see in it at all. So I'm hoping we can keep it open enough that we'll be able to see into it, because you can see right on through. I mean, the fish can swim in and through and out the other side. And so hopefully that will be interesting. So let me get on with it. I feel like we've got the water level low enough. We're getting down to where the heating element's about to be exposed above the water line, and that is a big no-no. Not only is it dangerous, but it can actually destroy your aquarium heater very quickly. And if that glass cracks and the water gets to the heating element, that can become an electrical shock hazard or kill fish or fire hazard or whatever. So we're going to get on top of that right now. So give me a minute, well, give me a little while, and we'll get to see what this tank looks like once I've got all this done. Alright, and there's the final product. So the wood actually went down into the water nice and easily. I didn't get any buoyancy once I started filling the tank back up. I was really afraid that once we got to the point where we were above the water line from before, that would start floating the log back up in the water a little bit, but it did not. It stayed down nice and tight. I was able to get that big chunk of rock moved. You can see it comes way down here and sticks out. The tank was nice and clear when I came in, but all the fish scattered everywhere and turned up a bunch of mulm and stuff off the bottom, so it looks a little cloudy again. So what I wound up doing was moving everything down this way, and that disrupted this big piece of wood. So I took this piece of wood here, rearranged it, and it's actually a really interesting piece of wood. I found this one out the reservoir too, and it is actually full of holes and spaces and little nooks and crannies. It's a really interesting piece of wood. A lot going on, not only visually but texturally, as far as providing habitat, not only for the fish, but for bacteria. I can attach plants to it. Wasn't really happy with that piece when I first brought it in, but over the years I've really grown to like that here in the tank. I was also able to take this piece here and lower that way down. I did have some stuff that was attached to it and growing on it. It was that Java fern you can see right there, but that came off when everything sort of fell over and fell apart. So I just kind of tucked it under there, laid the piece of wood back down on top of it. I mean, it's literally just lying right on top of it. The fish probably I mean, it's almost neutrally buoyant. The fish could probably lift that piece of wood up if they bang into it when they're swimming. So we'll see what happens with that piece of Java fern, whether or not it attaches to anything and starts growing. I did take a little piece of Java fern and I tucked it into that hole. If I reach to the bottom, I could poke it out. That actually just goes right into this open cavity in the middle there. I've really been enjoying watching the fish swimming in and out of that. The little sucker fish seem to like it a lot. You can even see one right down there now. So I've now seen the tilapia swim in and out of there once, and I have actually seen my big pleco in here sitting up on the wood down at this portion of it. So we might get to see a little bit more activity in this tank now that that wood is in a slightly different position. Again, so far I'm just really liking it. I love the visuals of it. And then again, with the tank being open, you can see more space down here. When I came in, the tilapia was out swimming around with everybody else. Of course, whenever I walk in the room, the tilapia goes and hides in its corner. I'm not really sure what that's all about. I've never done anything to that. Well, I have moved it from tank to tank on a few occasions, so maybe it still remembers those times it got netted and moved around, and it still just doesn't trust me after all these years, but whatever. The other thing I did was I took some of the rocks that I moved out of the tank, and I just put them up here on top. No, nothing really special or anything. It just breaks up these unnatural square lines and makes it just a little softer on the eyes. It looks a little less fish tanky, a little more, sort of natural outdoorsy. I do have to be careful as we walk past to get back to where the exercise equipment is or whatever. If me or the missus bangs into that and knocks it down, that could be bad. The one that I'm really kind of concerned about, and I don't think this one's actually going to stay here, is this one. Because if this one gets knocked down, I can just see that going right into that glass, and that would not be good at all. Or even falling, hitting that, and bouncing back into this tank. Either way, that wouldn't be a good thing to happen. But I need something in there at the moment to keep that propped up. As I said earlier, it's keeping that whole thing rolled back this way so we can actually see into that cavity a little bit, and that's why I brought it home, is I want to be able to see fish swimming in and out of that cavity. So we got my angelfish in there. If you'll remember, I brought home that other angelfish. I put it in this tank. Within a few days, I noticed its eyes were cloudy, so I took it out of this tank and put it in my quarantine. And then I had to treat this tank because this angelfish started showing a little bit of cloudiness to its scales. And I was able to treat this tank. Everything's fine. All the fish are fine. And the other angelfish that had been in my quarantine tank, the original one with the cloudy eyes, cleared up to the point where its eyes were no longer cloudy, but it still swam into things like it was blind. And I did put it back in this tank, and I saw it kind of swimming around aimlessly for a day or two, and then I never saw it again. So I have no idea what happened to it. But even on the times I did see it, I had to really hunt for it. It was just like hiding in a corner or sort of hovering underneath of a leaf somewhere. So I don't know what happened to that angelfish, but it was in a bad way the day I brought it home, and it never did survive. So I guess in theory it could be in this tank hiding somewhere, but I have not seen hide nor hair of it in a couple of weeks. And today, with me being in there as much as I was, I'm kind of writing it off as it's no longer with us. And you can see right now, maybe you can see, you're probably seeing the backside of a reflection of my waterfall tank. Unfortunately, with all the bright light and everything, we got this and all that light color. I guess I could hang a dark sheet or a dark blanket or something right there, and it would block some of that bright color, because that's what you're seeing, all this reflection in the background. When you got these bright lights like this, they're shining past the tank, and everything in front of the tank lights up and glares on the glass, so it's tough to get good video with the tanks lit the way I've got them lit. But there you go. This wasn't really what I planned on doing today. I had planned on shooting a video about the nitrogen cycle, but I never got around to it. I wound up shooting this video instead, but there you go. Make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss anything I've got coming up. You won't miss the video about the nitrogen cycle, and you won't miss any more videos about this here 125 gallon native tank. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.